Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you today. I'm Shakila Ahmad, and it is my honor to introduce our keynote and the wonderful project we're going to talk about today. Portraits in Faith is a project that is really at the intersection of great passions in Daniel's life, helping others, bringing people of different faiths and cultures together, global travel and photography. Wonderful. And Daniel has been long involved in community service, focused on reconciliation and dialogue across racial, religious, and ethnic communities. In 1994, Daniel actually co-founded and then co-led for 2 years the Cincinnati African American Jewish Dialogue. And Daniel was a co-leader of the Open the Space Cincinnati, a really unique large group race relations dialogue program following the race riots in Cincinnati in 2001. Daniel is marketing and innovation director consultant based in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was previously a Harley Procter marketing director at Procter & Gamble, where he was employed for 21 years. And it was really during his course at P&G that he conducted most of the Portraits of Faith interviews. He is a very bright guy with an MBA from Northwestern Kellogg School of Management in Evanston, Illinois, and a BBA in accounting from Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's my pleasure to have Daniel share with us about Portraits of Faith, Portraits in Faith.
Thank you so much, Shakila. It's great to be connected to you, and I'm looking forward to later in tonight's presentation when I get to interview you. So welcome everybody to this presentation. I'm going to be sharing with you about this project called Portraits in Faith, and then I'm hoping to role model for you this very particular thing called sacred listening that has come out of this project for me. You know, my story is that really I was a marketing director at Procter & Gamble. I got to work on all those lovely household cleaning products. I spent many years thinking about your laundry. But really what was going on personally for me was best summed up by a psychiatrist who I once went to see in Boston, and he described me as a young man who wasn't happy about much, which sadly was highly accurate. This project kind of emerged for me as I was traveling the world for Procter & Gamble, and it has had a profound healing impact on my life, in addition to many other things. This project, I think, has really resulted in me being much more grateful, connected, and I hope of service to others. So it's had a profound impact on me. Essentially, I have interviewed and made black and white portraits of 450 people, actually probably now closer to 500 in 27 countries. And I asked them all similar questions. The questions I ask are, what is your earliest memory of faith or of having faith? What was the first time in your life you had to or chose to rely upon God as you understand God? And I might even add, even though this is the Festival of Faiths, that my favorite interview is with an atheist, and I think the most spiritual, if that sounds strange, but it's true for me. I ask, tell me about a time you doubted your faith and what happened. What are you most grateful for? What is your greatest wish? Do you have a message? And what would you like people to know about you when they see your portrait? This project's been going on for 20 years, but about 9 years ago, people had been asking me to please start sharing this content uh, with the public in a broader way. Um, we started a website 9 years ago. At first, I was actually thinking that this content should be like a PBS special, and because of my work contacts, I was very fortunate to be connected to Ken Burns, the famous documentary filmmaker who has now been an advisor for about 10, 11 years. And what Ken Burns said to me was, have the courage to say this isn't a film. Everybody wants to make a PBS special, but not everything is meant to be that. And so as I thought about it, well, I have 450, 500 talking heads. I have these portraits. I couldn't afford time or money to produce them all at once. So let's start a website. We started with 13, and we've added another portrait and interview every few weeks. And so we're up to 125. And so you can go to our website, Portraits in Faith, and you'll see something similar to what's on your screen, and you can subscribe. We now have 3,000 to 4,000 people who are active subscribers. So every time I publish a new person's portrait and interview, I write a reflection as well, you would be notified. In December, this past December, we published a Portraits in Faith coffee table book with the first 125 portraits, interviews, and reflections as well. And the reflections have become an important part for me. I try to be provocative on what was the spiritual lesson raised for me in each interview. So, for example, I've written about things like, when is it the right decision to not forgive somebody? What are the spiritual issues of homelessness for those of us who have homes and those of us who do not have homes? What are the spiritual issues for transgender people, both for them and for those of us who are cisgendered? So I try to be provocative in what I write about, and you'll find that in the coffee table book, which can be purchased on Amazon. And so, as I said, this has been 500. I have now interviewed and made portraits of 500 people in 27 countries. It's been going on 18 to 20 years. We have about 440,000 YouTube views, about 3,000 subscribers. So, in the world of Procter and Gamble, we do not call that viral, but it's respectable. And I'm really grateful that people are finding value with the content. So I want to share with you, to kind of get us started, what I call a photographic meditation. And this may be unusual, but I'm going to be sharing with you 60 portraits to music. And this is going to take 10 minutes, but it's a very important part of tonight's presentation. And I want to suggest to you that you focus on the portraits as they come up and the music, and to receive each of these 60 people, these 60 out of the 500. And I'd like to get your thoughts and feelings in the chat after you watch this 10-minute photographic meditation. Okay, so I'm now going to start that, and I invite you to receive 60 of these people that I have met with and been with around the world.
I am a pilgrim and a stranger, traveling through this wearisome land. I have a home in that yonder city, good Lord, and it's not made by hand. I've got a mother, a sister, and a brother who all have gone. This this way before. I am determined to go and meet them, good Lord, over on that other shore. I'm going down to the river of Jordan just to bathe my weary soul. If I could just touch the hem of his garment, good Lord, then I know he would make me whole. I am a pilgrim and a stranger, traveling through this wearisome land, and I've got a home in that yonder city, good Lord, but it's not made by hand.
Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide within thy law. Help them, oh God, help them, oh God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee, oh God, oh my God. hearts of thy servants, and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide within thy law. Help them, O God, help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee, O God, oh my God, and grant them strength to serve thee, oh God, oh my God.
Well, thank you for. Sometimes that happens. The music keeps playing. Well, I offer an opportunity for you to put in the chat any thoughts and feelings that came to you as you received those 60 people. And I'll welcome to see what you have to say. Had a little bit, Carol says serenity. Definitely, I feel that. And while that may have been obvious, really in the eyes, so much, what I tell people is these aren't glamour shots. I'm just trying to bring forth your true spirit through your eyes. Yeah, I want to know their stories. Beauty in the diversity. It's so true. I have a funny story for you guys. One of the producers who I worked with to find people in a particular country, I can't remember which one, said to me, "Oh, do you only want me to recruit attractive people? Because everybody in your project is so attractive." I was like, I would never say something like that. And I thought, well, if everyone appears attractive, it's because everybody is attractive. Yeah, a lot of vulnerability. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, a lot of acceptance. I think for me, gratitude quickly became the face of faith. And in fact, this may sound a little awkward, but to me, God was gratitude. That anytime that I'm grateful, regardless of situation, I feel a connection to the divine. And anyway, well, thank you for your comments. I'm going to continue on. Feel free to add more. So you saw the questions that I asked. I will tell you that I ask one theological question. I try to stay out of theology, but sometimes it just helps to ask people, what is your concept of God or a higher power? I try to then get into the experiences which are, brought forward through the other questions. So I'm going to share with you in this part of tonight's presentation a few video clips of how people around the world have answered these 4 questions. And then I'm very, very blessed. We're all blessed that Shakila Ahmad has agreed for me to interview her live, not just so that we can get to know Shakila better, but so that both Shakila and I can role model for the rest of you. What is this idea of sacred listening? What is this idea of receiving somebody's story? And uh, and you'll hear more later, but when I first started this project, I thought it was about everybody gets to tell their story. And then I came to realize that it's about listening to someone's story, and that it's really about the receiving of someone's story that is even more powerful. So let me jump in and show you a few video clips. So this first one is, I've asked many people, what is your concept of a higher power or God? And I'm going to share with you two video clips, both very unexpected. Many of you are probably not familiar with the Zoroastrian religion, which is Persian in origin and then really mainly based in India today in Parsi neighborhoods. But this first person is a fire temple head priest, Freddie Kambacha. He, like me, is a former miserable accountant, and I seem to find my brothers all around the world. And this is what Freddie had to say. And if you know anything about the Zoroastrian religion, this will not surprise you. What he says is his concept of God.
What is your idea of God? How do you experience God?
I see God in nature. Like the most concrete example of God is air. Air is something which we cannot see, but all the time we feel. We feel cold, we feel hot. Air makes us feel everything, but we cannot see air. So air is such an element of God, which you have to just feel and believe. And my religion teaches me that my religion is always depends on elements of God, nature, like plants, air, earth, water, human beings and animals, mountains, and of course sky, clouds. The 7 creations of God, and I strongly believe in. And that those elements of nature make me believe that there is God somewhere.
And I mentioned to you that my favorite interview in the whole project is with an atheist. And this is that interview. Tom Beauchamp was my original producer when I went to Brazil, and our mutual photography instructor suggested that I ask Tom to find me some people for this project in Brazil. And I offer to you what I think is actually the most spiritual interview, but take a listen. It might surprise some of you. Okay?
Well, I don't pray. I don't feel the need to pray. But I do believe that faith is something that we created, we humans. I don't think a dog prays. I don't think a plant prays. I think it's something that we developed, that something that we found the need for it, and instead of God creating us, I think we created God. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that, because I think it's just the concept. And for me, faith is not believing that this is the most important thing. That having things is the most important thing. And I don't mean to, I don't want to make a vote for poverty. It's not that. I want to have things. I just don't want things to have me. And I rather create stuff. I rather create friendships. So for me, faith is in the relationship, not going to a church. I mean, if you want to go to church, go ahead. I mean, you have the right to go. I'm not saying don't go to church. I'm just saying don't invite me. Go by yourself.
So the second question, just in the interest of time, I'm just going to say that this project brings in many different views, including the one that that Tom just expressed, which again, you might say that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to honor each person's journey, and I'm trying to show that we're all on the same journey together. Or as Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. The second question I ask is, what's your earliest memory of faith or having faith? And I'm going to share with you two people, Renee Morgan Brooks, who's a wonderful woman, used to be a music minister in Louisville. Now she's a minister out in Phoenix.
I started off as a Baptist, and then my mother decided that she was going to look into Jehovah's Witness, and that never took for me because by that time I think I was in 16, and my grandmother lived with us, and so my grandmother was a Baptist born and bred, and she was going to be a Baptist when she's dead kind of thing. So at age 16 and there's no father in the house, then that means, because my father had died when I was 5, that means I now have the responsibility of driving my grandmother to the Baptist church, coming back and getting my mother and do the religious chauffeur run. However, Sunday mornings were all about fixing hair and fixing waffles and getting everybody situated and ready to go to church, and singing. My grandmother and my mother both sang in the choir. So while I'm preparing to take them their separate ways, there are always gospel songs that are being sung, songs of faith. My mother was a breadwinner, my grandmother was the homemaker. And when it was hard for my mother, she would sing, And it's that kind of song that I could just imagine Harriet Tubman singing. Oh, I couldn't hear nobody pray. Couldn't hear nobody pray, Lord, way down yonder by myself, and I couldn't hear nobody pray. But when it became fulfilled, she'd sing things like, said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. I said I wasn't gonna tell nobody, but I could keep it to myself what the Lord has done for me. And then she just squeezed herself like this and said, thank you, Lord. Oh yeah, that's what I was raised with. So there was no chance not to be connected with this flow of spirit. I started off.
The next person is really, really special. She just passed away at 100 years old. Her name is Anna Halpern, and she's considered, those of you who are into dance and movement, she's considered the mother of postmodern dance, an incredible figure. I was fortunate to do a 1-week movement course with her at Esalen many years ago, and she agreed that I could interview her if I brought her some dirty jokes. There you go. And it's all spiritual. So anyway, here's Anna recalling her earliest memory of faith.
Okay, this is Anna Halpern, and I live here in Kentfield, California, right outside of San Francisco.
Wonderful.
Old. And every Saturday we would go visit my grandparents who lived on the west side of Chicago, where all the Jewish community lived. But they weren't just Jewish community, it was a recent immigrants. And I would go to see my grandfather in the synagogue because that's where he was on Saturday. And I would be asked to sit up in the balcony because that's where all the women were to sit. So I was very proud to be able to sit with the women, and here I was, this little girl, and I'd walk down the block all by myself, and it was a regular ritual for me that every Saturday I would go visit my grandfather in synagogue and would go upstairs and sit with the women, and then I'd look down over the balcony and see if I could find my grandfather. And my experience was just so beyond anything I had ever seen in my life at that time. To see this very vigorous man with a long white beard and white silky hair jumping up and down with great ecstasy, and I would hear these kinds of words that I had never heard in my life, and it was all so mysterious. I just couldn't put it all together. I don't understand, was this really my grandfather? Or the way he was flinging his arms in the air and chanting these unusual sounds that were obviously in some form of Hebrew or Yiddish. But there was something that would move me in a way that I had never, as a child, experienced. And I felt that, well, at this moment, when my grandfather was dancing like this, that he must be God. Because as a 5-year-old, my image of God was an old man with long white beard and long silky white hair. And I thought, oh, this is how God prays. And that was so embedded in my awareness. And then, even to this day, I can picture it as if I were there now. And then, when it was all over, he would know that I was there, and he would wave to me, and I would go down and meet him, and he would pick me up in his arms, and he would hug me and pat me, and then we would hold hands, and we would go back home. And I thought, oh, this is a blessed moment, because I'm holding God's hand, and we are dancing together. And that image has stayed with me all my life, as if that's what I've been searching for. My whole life is to find a dance that would mean as much to me as his dance had meant to him.
The core question of my documentary project is this: what was the first time in your life you had to or chose to rely upon God or your higher power as you understand God or that higher power? And I want to share with you two interviews that are very special to me. Actually, both Muslim. The first one, Sufi, to be specific, and a wonderful Sufi sheikh who lived in Jerusalem. For his family lived there for over 500 years so far. And the second, a P&G colleague of mine in Cairo. So the first one is Sheikh Abdul Aziz Bukhari, who sadly died in the last year or two, and I'll share with you his interview.
Actually, when I was living in the state, I had a heart attack. And they took me to the hospital. And after they checked me out, they said, you have to have an open heart surgery. And but you can't tell the doctors, no? So, okay, So they start rolling me to the operation room. And I was laying on the stretcher going to the operation room, and I see the ceiling above me. And all of a sudden, the ceiling disappeared. There's no more ceiling. and I saw just the sky, and I said, what am I doing here in the United States? What am I doing here? Am I doing things for God or for myself? And I said, God, I've been neglecting you for many years. If you give me another chance, I will work to please you and to do things you want me to do. And for sure, after I got out of the operation, the amazing thing, the doctor couldn't believe. After the third day of my operation, and they didn't put even one bandage on my wound. All my stitches healed in 3 days. And the doctor, he's like, there's not even one small problem I had. The wound healed so fast, the doctor was like, how that happened? And after 13 days exactly, he said, you can fly back to Jerusalem. Because I told him, I'm not leaving the hospital unless I'm able to go to Jerusalem. So after 13 days, he said, yes, you can fly to Jerusalem. And I went from the airport, from the hospital to the airport directly. And I got on the plane, and I came to Jerusalem. I left everything behind. Because what I was doing just for this world, and I realized I'm not doing anything for God. So I came back and I started updating my knowledge about religion, about God, and start preaching and start working for God more than I was relying on my father, and now I said, no, it's time for me to start. And after that, my father passed away, so I became a sheikh. So my father, when...
And this is my friend and colleague from Cairo, Orada Ezeldin, who speaks about deciding to get married at a very late age in Arabic culture and having a pivotal moment when on Hajj in Mecca overlooking the Kaaba. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's one very important experience. I met my husband at the age of 34, and as of the age of 21, I was very much interested in getting married and having a family. I was always dreaming of having 6 kids, and strangely enough, I was also dreaming of not working, years to find the right person. And this journey of finding the right person was not easy. So it had lots of frustrations, lots of ups and downs, hopes and frustrations. And it was not easy, and especially in our culture, where there's a lot of pressure to marry at an early age, like, between around maybe 20, 22. If you're 25, you're already, labeled as a spinster, or there's something wrong with you. So you can imagine, the pressures that I've been through from family and friends and so on. But I did not want to give up, and I had a lot of opportunities. I did not want to get married just for the sake of, getting married and getting the social acceptance from the society. So I was looking for, someone very special. And this journey of search was very painful to me. Then as I became older and I got into the 30s, people started to tell me, you may not have children because it becomes more difficult with age and so on. So it was quite painful. But then the very strong thing that happened to me, I remember that it was the second week of December in 2001. I was in the Holy Land in Saudi Arabia, and I was inside the Holy Mosque in Mecca, and I was praying to God, I mean, to help me, find the right person and so on. But then at a certain moment, I felt that, in a way, I surrendered my personal will to God's will. And at this exact moment, it was different, because before that I was praying and asking God, to help me find the right person. But at this point in time, I felt that, I have no power, no matter what I want to do in terms of, planning and thinking and trying to make things happen. If I don't give my will to God's will, it will not happen. And this thing gave me a lot of strength, and it moved me spiritually very much. And 2 weeks later, I met my husband, and 1 year later, we got married. But I still remember this moment in Mecca. I was in the second floor of the mosque, looking at the Kaaba down, and I was praying, and I got this strong feeling of, really, it's all God's will. And then after that, I realized this in life. You have to do your effort and you have to do everything, but at the end of the day, 90% of what happens to you, or even more, is because of God's will.
The final question that I ask people is, at least of the central questions here, is about doubt. And certainly in Judaism, doubt is very important. Struggling with God, that's what Yisrael means. Israel, it means to struggle with God. So doubt is very important. And in fact, a famous rabbi who I was blessed to interview, Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi, may he rest in peace, said that doubt scrapes the barnacles off of our faith so that it doesn't become superstition. So doubt is very important in the Jewish tradition, and I think it's important to hear people's stories of doubt. And I have one video here to share with you, a really amazing man. He's a Catholic preacher, not a priest, but a Catholic preacher in the Philippines, known around the world to Filipinos as the preacher in blue jeans. So Brother Bo Sanchez. And this is what he shared about his addictions, including addiction to pornography, but even more important, addiction to pleasing people, and how he came to realize that God didn't just love him, but God liked him.
Why was I molested? Why was I sexually abused? Maybe because I deserved it. Maybe
We're not getting audio here. Let me see here. What might be going on? Just give me a second, guys.
Why was I molested? Why was I sexually abused? Maybe because I deserved it.
We're only getting one audio channel. Let me see if I can.
We can hear it, Daniel.
Oh, you can hear his voice?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, go ahead.
Why was I molested? Why was I sexually abused? Maybe because I deserved it. Maybe I'm dirty. Maybe I'm ugly. I became addicted to pornography because, any kind of addiction is really trying to escape the sadness, the emptiness, the shame within you. Even more than pornography, I became addicted to pleasing people. I began to project onto God what I felt about myself. Maybe God is also ashamed of who I was. Maybe God didn't like me also, because I didn't like myself. And maybe God is a God with a checklist of my sins. He fell again in pornography. Oh boy, what's new? I cannot pinpoint a particular day and time where suddenly I realized he wasn't like that. But gradually, it just grew on me that there is this God who accepts me as I am, and who loves me and enjoys me, who likes me. Doesn't just love me, he likes me. He likes all of me.
So those are some excerpts, and what I want to do now is I want to role model live for you this interview process, and I'm so grateful to not only be friendly with, but to have this opportunity to interview Shakila Ahmad, who's such an amazing leader in our community, both in the Muslim community, but also in the interfaith community. And I'm just going to role model for you how I interview somebody, um, in the hopes that it might inspire you to have conversations like this. And something I should mention is um, this this is this is a form of interviewing where I will try not to lead the witness, as we say. We in my Procter and Gamble background, we don't go into somebody's home and say, "Well, Mrs. Ahmad, tell me why you love Tide." You know, show me where you got your stains out. No, we probably go into someone's home and say, "Oh, Mrs. Jones, tell me how you care for your family's clothing." Or somebody in the food category might say, "Oh, show me how you prepare for a party." We don't want to make any assumptions. And really, the majority of our responses should be, "Oh, say more. Oh, tell me more about that." Um, Not, "Well, I don't know. My view of Jesus is X, Y, and Z." That's not a that's not sacred listening. So I hope to role model this, and at the same time, we're all going to get to know Shakila and her background. And again, most of this, except for the question about concept of God, is all about her experiences. There is no wrong or right answer because it's her experiences. So Shakila, thank you so much for doing this.
I'm humbled and I'm a little intimidated after seeing those amazing inspirational videos, and the portraits are truly amazing. So thank you. I'm also excited to learn about myself.
Well, let's just start off, not really with the questions I asked, but just so everybody has a sense of where were you born, where have you gone to school? I know you have adult children. Tell us about your children and about your husband and where you work, the basic background before we get into these questions about spirituality.
Well, sure. I have a very diverse path with lots of diverse experiences, and I'm thankful for all of those. I was born in Pakistan. I was born in a small village where my maternal grandmother and grandfather, they had land, and so my mother was the firstborn. I was going to be the firstborn in her family, and so it was tradition to go back to the mother's house to to have that first baby. So I was born in Pakistan. I lived there for about 8, almost 9 years before we immigrated to the US. My father was a trained professor of education from the US, and he really wanted the best educational system at that time for his 4 little babies. And I was the eldest of 4. And so that's how I came to Cincinnati, and we stayed here instead of Wisconsin because somebody said it's too cold to go to Wisconsin and live there. So they didn't know about the storms here these days, but nonetheless, so we ended up staying in Cincinnati, and he was a professor at UC. This is my village. I grew up here. I lived here all of my life until I got married. And after that, we lived in Michigan for a few years. And it so happens, the opportunity for my husband to come back here for a fellowship and for me to have the wonderful IBM. My husband's still mad I didn't go to work for P&G. I'll let you know, but I'll tell him you left them after 21 years. So I went to UC and really got an amazing education and worked for IBM. And we have 3 adult children and 1 little grandbaby. We have a daughter who lives very, very close to us and who has the baby. So she says, "I know why I'm your favorite now." And, the 2 boys, one is on the West Coast with his lovely wife, and one just started surgery residency. So he's a little busy, but I do a lot of philanthropic work, but I also helped after I left IBM, establish my husband's our medical practice. So allergy and asthma has been kind of the side business, and really the interfaith work has been probably more full time, but it's been an honor to do, all of those things.
That's great. And you've been very involved at the Islamic Center, right? Up in Westchester?
Right. I was asked to be on my parents were always involved in the community. I went from knowing 5 Muslim families when we moved here, to now over 1,500 that pray just Jummah. And so I saw that community grow and flourish, and I was asked to be on the board of directors for the Islamic Center when it was breaking ground and getting ready to open. And I joined with mostly uncles at that time, and really have stayed involved since then. And I served as the board chair and president for 5 years, a few years back. And it was amazingly hard work, and probably the most fulfilling work as well that I've done.
I have to ask you one last question before we jump into my special questions. What You're probably the most visible and involved member of the Muslim community involved in interfaith work here in Cincinnati. What drives you to do that, just as a preface to these other questions?
I think it really goes back to why I agreed to come onto the board of directors for the Islamic Center is that I was involved in education and outreach, helping people to learn about the university as an orientation leader. And, I really thought about, hey, there's this beautiful place, but people are going to have all kinds of questions and all kinds of preconceived notions. And so even before the opening, there was talk about, setting up a tour or something just for the opening day weekend. And I'm like, well, that's something I'm comfortable with. And it's an opportunity for me to also learn about my faith and art and architecture. And so really that's how it began. And I will tell you, Daniel, is that having the opportunity, as I see from you sharing in this beautiful book, is to know other people and to understand them and to help them learn and see a new light of the way other people are is extremely enriching. And so, I think we're both blessed to be able to do the work that we do.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let's go ahead and ask. Let's start with what is your concept of God personally?
I didn't prepare very much, so because I think we just want to have a conversation. And so, when I think about God, the one word that keeps coming up is just omnipresent. Is that God is, yes, He's in charge of the heavens and the earth and our life and our being and all of that. But then He's as close and the closest thing to my heart than anyone or anything else, and knows everything about me and what I'm thinking, and is a presence that's always there because of the incredible power that I believe that the one and only creator, we know Him by Allah, but people know Him by all kinds of names and all kinds of feelings, as we heard, and is that a presence that's always there, that's sometimes guiding me, and sometimes I'm not seeking when I need to be seeking, but is omnipresent.
Beautiful. What is your earliest memory of having faith? Not so much ritual. I know a lot of people think about different rituals, and some of those can be profound. But do you have a moment in your life where you realized that you had faith in this omnipresent God?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'd thought about this particular memory in the past, but I hadn't thought about it from that angle. And so that is one, is I remember that I grew up as a child in Pakistan, and so I must have been 7, 8, and I remember it must have been my very first fast during the month of Ramadan. You get up early, you have a big meal, and that's all fun and cool and everything. But then you're not eating all day and not drinking anything. And I remember it was warm, it was hot. It's mostly hot in Pakistan, but I think it was more than usual. It must have been, I'll have to go back and do thinking about what time of the, what month it might have been. But I remembered that I fasted and I was committed to keeping the fast. But then, I went outside to play and it was later in the afternoon and it was super hot. I'm sure I was super thirsty and hungry, I'm sure. And, my mother was probably telling me to go play and be distracted and such. And I remember thinking, but nobody's around, and if I really wanted to get a drink of water or eat a piece of fruit or something, nobody would know. And, what difference would it make? And really, I mean, I thought about it and I'm like, well, you know what? I did this for a reason. God would know. And I did it because I wanted to do it. And even if somebody else is not watching, I feel like this omnipresence, this Allah, God is watching. And if I'm really, committed to what I said I was going to do, then, get it done, girl, and it was really, it was very interesting. I think about that a lot, is that I could have chosen to, to easily do something else. And it would have been no difference. Everybody would have still celebrated little Shakila keeping her first fast and giving her all kinds of treats and special things at the end of the fast at the iftar time. But I'm like, no, this is what I believe, and I'm going to stick with it. So
that's great.
It comes back to me from time to time.
What would you say was the first time in your life you feel like you had to rely upon God?
Oh gosh, there's so many times. But I guess it was really, I did think a little bit about this, and it was really interesting listening to Gada. But I grew up here. I very much, American culture was what I was most familiar with, and yes, had fun with the food and the clothes and the music from Pakistan. But I really thought I was going to marry someone who's fully American. I did not want to meet any FOBs people, from the other parts. I mean, everybody knows what fresh off of the boat is, and I was told that my husband's father and my father were best friends in college, and that they wanted us to meet. The Jewish story goes, you had a really good boy for you to, or a really good girl for you to meet. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I want to finish my education, and that's it. And when I meet him, I'll see, but nobody better pressure me, And so I met him, and they did pressure me, but at the same time, I felt like there was something there. I felt like that this person would be very adaptable, would, pick up the American culture very readily, and that would allow me to really retain my heritage and my roots in a way that by the end of graduating from college, which is exactly when this was, very early on, and so I really had at that time to rely on God. But I don't know what this is going to hold for me. I have no idea. I really don't know this person, and I don't know if I ever will, even if I, dated him and lived with him and all of that. But I'm going to have to rely on God in order to make this life-changing decision for myself. And so I would say, for me, it was the most important adult decision that I made, and I relied on God for it more than anybody else. I definitely, and he turned out to be cool. So we're gonna have our 40th wedding anniversary in about 10 days. So
Wow.
and I was, of course, only 10 when I got married, but that's just kidding.
Is there another time you feel like you had to rely upon God that you'd like to share?
Well, there are other times, a lot, and it's kind of related to one of your other questions, and I'll just talk about it, is that my brother, I'm the eldest, and my brother, who was, barely 18 months younger than I, was diagnosed with a rare neurological disease, which there's no cure for. It was, and there was nothing to slow down the progression. He was brilliant. He loved life. He was always laughing, smiling, and never said bad things about anybody. And so I really grappled with that. We all, our whole family grappled with that. And there were no answers in this earthly world that we know of in terms of, peace and solutions. The only thing that we felt we could rely on was God, was that somehow he knew better than us, and somehow that things eventually would be okay. And it was very hard. It was really, really very hard. I remember just endlessly being in the car crying, or, asking the imam to say prayers, or asking, being at the mosque during Ramadan. And it was very hard. There was no one else that could really to help provide some level of comfort and stability, so I could do what I needed to, which was to help take care of him and be of support to he and the family and my parents. You never imagine that you would lose one of your children, especially a young, vibrant, healthy adult. So absolutely, we had to rely on God incredibly.
Would you say that you doubted your faith at that time, or that was more of a time where you relied on God?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I think initially there was, not just myself, but other members of it, there was anger, there was anguish. How could, we're good people, we don't hurt anybody, we try to help people and serve our community. How could you let this happen to our family? How could you, allow so much pain to enter our space? And so, yeah, in that sense, in that midst of the anger, I think sometimes you do grapple with doubt. You do grapple with, what is the purpose of this world? I know we all have to go, but why is there suffering? Why is there loss of life of young, innocent people? And so, it does challenge your faith. Absolutely, it challenges your faith.
What are you most grateful for, Shakila?
Masood and I, my husband and I, always talk about we can never be thankful enough. I mean, I think this is the one thing that we really can't, and we forget as human beings to be grateful. And I think in the end, what I'm most grateful for are the people that God has allowed to surround me. Is number one is my family, and allowing them to be who they are. And I probably am, they're all going to watch this and they're going to say, she's the hardest on us than anybody else, which is true. But I love them, you know, to the moon and back, and I rely on them in just enormous ways. So why would I not be grateful for having them in my life and for having them there to my husband constantly reminding me that, you know, remember, you're not doing what you're doing for yourself or glory or fame. What are you doing it for? Be always centered on what it is that you're doing the work for, and what is it that you want to be able to get out of it, and you know, then share with others, and even my kids and my parents, my siblings that I still have are a blessing. But you know, it goes beyond that. You know, the people within the community that I live in, the people that I've had the opportunity to interact with, you know, I didn't know what I thought about you when I first met you, honestly. I'm like, I don't know, he interviews people. No, I don't want someone to interview me. So I just kind of avoided the topic. But you know, your book really moved me. I opened it and I was reading the stories, and so you know, you're one incredible example. I see Marlena on right there on the call, and I see you know, other people that absolutely have been a blessing to have in my life, because I've learned so much from them. I've grown in so many different ways, and I've had a lot of laughs and wonderful experiences with so people, absolutely.
What's your greatest wish?
Gosh, so many, but my greatest wish, it's kind of simple, that that I leave the world a little bit better than when I came into it. And I leave it better for not just, you know, my children, and now I have a grandchild, not just for my grandbabies I hope to have more of, but you know, everyone's children and their grandchildren, they deserve better than, you know, whatever it is that we have. And as blessed as we were, I want them to have more blessings. I want them to have a more peaceful world. I want them to have the amazing experiences, you know, that you and I have been able to have. It's only fair. It's only right. It's a simple thing, but we have to work for it. And so, you know, it's, and we all have to work for it collectively, David. I realize that you and I, you know, have to do whatever we can, but it's, you know, it's with that belief and that faith and that, you know, working with those that we love around us, and even maybe some of those we don't love so much around us, but then maybe we can leave the world a little bit better than when we found it.
Do you have a message?
Oh gosh, you did put that in there. My message would be, you know what? Learn about people and learn about life through life experiences. It's not just about, you know, academic degrees. And I come from a family of educators, or it's not just about how successful I can be, but how it is that I can enrich my life by experiences and relationships with other people. So learn about them, get to know them, stand shoulder to shoulder to serve the needy, to serve the poor, to serve the hungry, to build understanding. So that would be my message is, you know, get out of, I need to go and have a wonderful dinner with my family and friends from out of town. And I can't wait, because I get to celebrate them and I get to hear about all the wonderful experiences that they're having. And I can't wait to see you the next time that we have the opportunity to meet. That's my message. That's all.
Well, I'm going to be, we'll have to arrange it in the future. Normally I'm in person with somebody, but we're going to make a portrait of you for the project, with this being the interview. What would you like people to know about you when they see your portrait?
You know, that, you know what, I'm a human being with many faults. And so, this just came to my mind, is that Islam means submission to God, but it really means the greatest struggle is the struggle within to be the best that you can be. So I feel like, you know, my life has been a blessing, but that it is always a struggle to do the right thing, to be the best person that you are, to, you know, to value and respect the relationships that you have. And so I'm a work in progress. That's, you know, I may be an old
work in
lady,
progress.
a little grandbaby, but Nano, he calls me, but I'm a work in progress, and I'll keep working
Beautiful.
on it. I'm not going to stop.
Shaquila, thank you so much. What a blessing to know you, to get to know you better, and that you would be willing to do this. It's just such a great blessing. I'm just going to close up tonight's presentation with a few final slides to kind of wrap up some lessons of this project that I think you might find interesting too in the last few minutes. So Joey, if you'll switch back to me, and I'm going to just share a few more slides, everyone, to kind of bring some final perspective to what you've seen tonight. One of my conclusions is that respecting all religions is not about respecting their theology or dogma. It's about seeing another person and saying, there is a human being trying to connect with the divine. And something that I want to tap into, what Shaquila just said, that came to me is, and I know this is a lot to read, but I think it's really important. You know, every religion has a certain tip of the spear in terms of religion, as Shaquila just reminded us, although I liked your broader definition, Shaquila, but Islam is to submit to God, and I need to submit to God. And I mentioned earlier in tonight that Yisrael, Israel, is to struggle, to wrestle with God, which we get from the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel and then having his name changed to Israel. Christianity has taught me to allow God to love me unconditionally. And I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time with people of indigenous faith, indigenous people around the world, Aboriginals in Australia, First Nations in Canada, Native Americans. And they have taught me to see God in all, not even all living things, all of creation, I should change that to say. From Buddhism, I have learned to eliminate the suffering I cause myself and other people. And I've learned a lot about Hinduism, that the gods, really it's a monotheistic religion, and that the gods represent all the different manifestations of the divine. And as you might have heard earlier in tonight's presentation, I'm a big fan of learning from atheists, agnostics, humanists. They have so much to teach me about faith. And I believe all of these energies are needed on the journey to reconnect with the divine. Again, what I said earlier tonight, Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. Now, something that may be interesting to you, as I said, at first I thought this project was about, oh, everybody should get to be able to tell their story. And then my dear friend from Minneapolis, Ann Harbison, sent me this book, which was written by the creator of StoryCorps, that gets featured on NPR a lot. And it's called Listening is an Act of Love. And then I realized, oh my gosh, this project isn't about telling your story. It's about receiving somebody's story. It's about listening to someone's story without judgment and getting out of the way. And this is where I came up with this concept of sacred listening, which I call receiving the story of someone you perceive to be the other. Now, the truth is, I do not consider Shaquila Ahmad to be the other, although in many circles, a Jew and a Muslim, people would expect them to perceive the other as the other. And so this idea of reflecting on the other, where I'm taking Portraits in Faith is we're going to continue to publish interviews, but I'm also starting to run sacred listening workshops where we do exactly what I just did with Shaquila, but then we also reflect on these questions. Who do you see as the other? When have you felt like the other? Funny enough, a lot of people, most of us feel like we're the other. What have you learned from someone else's spiritual journey, like what we learned from Shaquila tonight? And how well do I listen to others? And so, what I would say is if you have any interest in what has happened here tonight, I will come free of charge to your organization and will lead both a presentation of this content and a sacred listening workshop. I just did this past Sunday in Charleston, South Carolina, hosted by the Daughters of St. Paul, with whom I'm close over many years, and for the interfaith community of Charleston, the Charleston Interfaith Coalition. I'm happy to come do that, especially for those of you in Cincinnati. If you're outside of Cincinnati, you would just have to fly me there, but otherwise it would be free. So that's what I had for you tonight. I think we're just about out of time. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has, either in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I'm happy to do that in our last 8 minutes. Bueller? Class? Anybody? Okay.
Hi, this is Marlena. Can you hear me? Sorry. Thank you so much. This was wonderful, and it was wonderful to learn more about Shaquila as well. But I just was excited about the overall theme and just the beauty of this and the images and the stories. And I'm also very excited at the prospect of you working with some of us to continue on with, learning more about others and in this way through this project. And so my question is, would you help us to tailor something for our particular groups or organizations? I'm an educator at a college. So for example, that type of group as well, or when you said you would be happy to come to an institution, were you referring to more of a religious institution?
No, anything. What I don't want this to be is just another interfaith method to be done. And then, oh yeah, we did that in 2022, back at the time of that recession and pandemic. This may sound strange, but I actually like the idea of starting within our communities, right? Because there's always another in the room. And, inside the Islamic Center, inside Adat Israel Synagogue, inside anywhere, a classroom. It's probably easier to project this onto a religious community just because of the nature of the content, but it could be inside of any community where people are willing to share their story and we can confront the idea of the other or discuss it. But I'm happy to do it for any community. Now, obviously, I come with a point of view, which is that the sharing of one's spiritual journey is particularly potent for dismantling notions of the other. Mm-hmm. So we could adapt it, and I'd be happy to train you to adapt it to not be those kinds of stories, right? I mean, I'm a single guy, but I'm sure that if I had the mothers in the room and we asked questions about mothering and childbirth and about raising sons and daughters, that could be equally dismantling of the notions of the other. That's just not the particular content I use to get
forgive me, because I'm actually a member of Equation, and for example, with my students, it is teaching through the, if you want to say, portraits of spirituality, and that I think would be very interesting. And just recently, for example, and Shaquila, this is something very personal. I often will get some feedback from the students that I take to the Islamic Center or to some of the synagogues, or we went to the Basilica Cathedral of St. Peter in Chains in many different places, but very recently, someone coming out of Ethiopia, who is one of my students, just went into the Islamic Center and had, very a group interaction, but personal for that person with some of the Muslims in our community, and literally wrote a paper for me a few days ago of how it changed her life and her perception of Muslims because of the background that she had had. And so I see what you're doing is just an incredible extension of this that is projected in a lot of different ways within our interfaith community, and I love this format, and I'm very excited if you'll present it in
Yeah, and we can even
different
have
ways with
people,
us.
now every one of us has a high-end camera. So you could even ask people to make a portrait as part of an afternoon exercise. Well, anyway, people be in touch, Daniel K. Epstein at gmail.com. I'm happy to work with you and your community free of charge to help you have an experience like what we did today with any community or combinations of community. For example, in Chicago, my girlfriend lives in Chicago, and she goes to the New Thought Unity up there, and it's located in a synagogue. So we're going to try and do this with the New Thought Unity congregation and the synagogue congregation that they have their Sunday worship at. So we're going to try and do it together. So I'm open to any and all combinations. I will answer this one question. How do I find people? Well, I make good use of being a marketing director, marketing consultant. So I hire freelance producers wherever I'm going around the world. Hey, I'm going to be in Tokyo for business on this week. I'd like to meet 3 to 5 people a day who'd be willing to share their story. And I've always been fine that person taps into their personal network. Some places it's a journalist doing this as a side gig. Some places it's a real producer. Sometimes it's just a friend. Like I have a dear friend who's a 40, 50-year devotee of Hare Krishna. So I have gone down to spend time with him in Alachua, Florida. So I just arrange it through people who know people in each location I'm going to. Anyway, I just want to go ahead and close out and say thank you to all of you for joining. You can reach me again at danielkepstein@gmail.com, or just go on the Portraits in Faith website. You can order the coffee table book off of Amazon or off of our website. And again, I'm just so grateful to Shakila for allowing us to interview her tonight and for her introduction of me. I'll see many of you on Sunday at the Festival of Faiths.